Hi, everybody. Welcome to week 2 of Listing Mania. I don't know about you guys, but what I saw last week just rocked my world. There was so much great information here for people that want to take more listings. We all know that is such an important part of leads, listings, and leverage that we hear so much about from Gary Keller. I'm really excited today to introduce Lori Silver Corsello. She is on the famous Sue Adler team, and Lori is absolutely a powerhouse of a listing agent on the team. And I think Lori, what, 50, 60 listings last year?
Yes, so I closed like 34.2 million last year.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So Lori, before you start, I'd love you to just give everybody a sense. Remember, people are here from all over the region.
Yeah.
I'd love you to give a sense of where you guys, geographically, where your focus is, as I'm sure there are going to be people that will need to send some listings your way. So take a minute before you jump in and tell us about yourself and your team, and then take it away.
I will. Thank you. So I'm really excited to be here, and I appreciate you having me and everybody who's showing up. I hope you take a couple of things away today that you can use in your business. I've been selling real estate since 2005. I was an independent agent for about 6 years, and I joined the Sue Adler team about 10 years ago. So we focus predominantly on the midtown direct train line towns. Although people aren't using them as much these days, but and all of the ancillaries. So really Morris, Essex, and Union County is where the bulk of our business is done. We're really not a one-town team. We really take a holistic approach. So I welcome any and all referrals, and we'll take good care of your clients. So when I joined Sue's team, I initially started as a buyer's agent, and I became her sales manager and lead buyer's agent early on in my path here. I transitioned into listings about 4 years ago. And like I said, I closed about 34.2 million last year. Year to date, I'm at 35, but the year is not over. I feel like this class is really timely because we all know the market is going to change. And I think data and what you can bring with that is going to become more and more important, especially in a market that becomes more challenging from a listings perspective. So my background prior to real estate was predominantly retail, and I worked in corporate retail for many years, and at that time training was really a serious aspect of business, and it was there that I really learned how to analyze a business and apply the data to achieve the results that we were looking to achieve. So the first thing that I think is really important when preparing information to share with your clients is to know your audience. You can be on autopilot, and I think, you know, we are taught to learn scripts, and we sort of have our listing presentation, and very often we practice, and we go in and we just have one way of it and thinking about it. And I think knowing your audience is really important, and I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are familiar with the DISC. And I'll go through it a little bit. So the DISC model discusses the 4 behavioral patterns and reference points. And when using data, each of these types of behavioral patterns will receive it differently. And so I think it's important to really assess your audience and know who you're talking to so that you can gauge your conversations and make it the most effective. So the first being the D, as we all know, the dominant driver, who is direct and strong-willed and forceful. In this case, let your data do the talking. They don't want a lot of fluff. They just want you to get to the bottom line, and they like to see it, and they don't really love your opinion unless they think that you're an influencer or somebody who they aspire to be. So D's are, they're challenging. I'm mostly D, so I can understand them a lot, but it's really important that you let your data do the talking. They're the best self-discoverers, I find, them and C's, but D's will take the information and they come in very opinionated, but when you show them the facts, you can get them to come around. So the I, the influencer, is a more sociable, talkative, and lively person, as we all know. And they're more of an ideas and emotions kind of personality. So you need to ask them what they're thinking and feeling and really listen to them both verbally and physically. So what happens with eyes is if you start to overload them with too much data, you're gonna see the difference and you're gonna lose them. So it's really important to understand, again, their personality and going in prepared. They can be very disorganized. They avoid details. So providing summaries of what you discussed at the meeting and then afterwards in an email maybe format is really helpful, because then they can go back and focus. But keep your information with them really focused, because you'll lose them otherwise. The S personality, we all know they're really even-tempered, composed. They are more about relationship and less about data. So for me with S's, I insert the data in after I've signed the listing more so than to get the listing. For them, they want me to love them and to love everything about them and ask them about their dog and their, vacation and their children. So with S's, if you go in too hard with data from the beginning, they're gonna look for somebody who they feel they can relate to. And then there are the C's, who are my favorite when it comes to data. They generally can't get enough of it, and they're easily impressed with it. So I find that most agents will bring data, but they don't dig deep enough for a C personality. And what I mean by that, they are not gut, they don't make decisions with their gut. They look at the facts and they use those facts to make those decisions. The more you bring with you and pile on for a C, that impresses them really up front. And again, following up with them, because they're so, I guess, specific, they love to have that information that they can refer back to. Most of the time, they don't like making decisions on the fly and won't just sign with you. Having conversations up front helps that, but certainly they like to review everything and go through it with their spouse and make the decision after the fact. So if you bring it with you and then follow up with the email, I find that to be really helpful. The key to all of this is you need to go in prepared. And because if you're unsure of your objection handling and what's happening in the market and all the questions that they're going to throw at you, you're not going to be a good listener. Going in prepared makes you a good listener, and you can use what they're saying and their body language to successfully insert the data when you need to or not. So don't go in on the fly, because you're going to end up regretting it, whether you use data or not. I think that's just a very true statement for all listing appointments. Does anyone have any questions? I can't really see the chat thing, so I don't.
Hey, Lori.
Yeah.
Could you give everybody, I don't want to turn this into that, but your 2-minute version of how you decide quickly so that you can prepare appropriately if somebody is a D, an I, an S, or a
Right.
C?
So 2 ways. So if you're on the phone making appointment with them, so if you're ISA, and I know I'm speaking to a lot of people who have different structures, which might not apply to everybody. So if you have an ISA who's making the appointment for you, having a phone call up front to introduce yourself, set the expectations, ask questions, etc., helps you determine that. So I think pre-qualifying is the best way. So on the phone, pre-qualifying them, you're going to get a good sense of what their personalities are. And if you don't, going into it, I think once you're in someone's house, you can. So come prepared with everything. Just pick and choose what you're going to present to them if you think it's not relevant or going to lose them. So just pick and choose. So why use data? And for me, data for me equals knowledge, and knowledge equals power. And I think having command of the market and going in with conviction just sets you apart, frankly. It definitely solidifies you as the local market expert. It gives you a powerful voice without having to say a lot. I think one of my strengths is allowing people to talk and keeping my mouth shut when I know it's going to be most effective. And the data speaks for me in a lot of cases. So, and then it helps me to achieve the best possible outcome for my sellers, right? So if I'm educating them and bringing a lot of information to the table, then they are able to make the best decisions for their family. And ultimately, if we work together with it, their house is going to sell quickly and they're going to in turn get top dollar. So it's a very versatile tool. What it can do is help you establish your market positioning, secure price reduction when you're presenting and negotiating offers. And I have an example. I don't know how legible it is on my slide, but I have a really good example of an email that I used when I received a lowball offer a year or two ago on a listing. And those are tough conversations to have, I know. Avoiding having a pricing discussion, because when you're going in and maybe they're interviewing 3 or 4 people, I don't know about you, but me personally, I don't want to give them a number up front. Or I'm meeting people who are not ready to go on the market maybe for 3 months, 6 months. And given what we're seeing today, you know, every day is different in real estate. So to project and throw out a number to them, it comes and bites you, but everybody wants to know it. So I'll show you kind of what I do to avoid getting into a specific pricing discussion. And I use the data also to nurture my pipeline. So I'm going to get into a little bit now about sort of establishing. So obviously, I'm sure a lot of this are things that you guys do, and I'll just sort of tell you, you know, when I go in. So when we sit down and talk about setting a price for a house, so establishing our market position, I use the MLS a lot. I go in from a very global perspective, and then I drill it down. And I use the information to massage. So most of the time, when I first show people, here's what I'm looking at, the first response I get is, well, my house has this, or my house has that, or it's better because of this, and this house, you know, doesn't have all of those things. And you use the data to massage, because we work, and I can't speak for everyone on this call, but for those of you who do, we're not, you know, new development tracks here. So each of our homes are very unique and different. And so using the data to say, okay, yes, this house priced for this and sold for this, and they had this, yes, you have this and this, so you have central air, you have a finished basement, you have a nicer yard, whatever those features are, let's look at that number and then determine, okay, so where does that position us? I also want to look at, you know, what's active on the market, because that's our biggest competition. And trust me, I know a lot of agents do it, and when I see a listing come on a day or two later after mine just under where I am, it hurts. But using the information, so I will go from the global, and then what I will do is I'm going to pull the history for each of the properties so that I can speak to, you know, how long was this house on the market? Was it on the market before? Was it on and off? Have they been chasing the market? How much time have they been there? If seller's disclosures are available, I will pull those as well so that I can really understand, you know, did that house have a newer roof, newer air conditioning? Do I know anything more about the house? Because I might not have been in it, or it could have closed, you know, a month ago and I just hadn't seen it, or I don't know those details about every property. So when I'm establishing market position, I go in very deeply, and there's a number of reports that I will pull from the MLS to show my clients. Securing a price reduction is very similar. I'm going to go to that slide. and see. I know it's hard to read, and I'm happy to share it after the call. But basically what I have here is I go in and say, thanks for, speaking with me. And I know that the offer that you received doesn't sit well with you. Let's take a look at where these people are coming from. And if they're wrong, we're going to respond using the data. And if they're right, then let's talk about what that feels like and looks like for you, and where are you guys willing to go with this. So very often I will respond to an offer using data to support the counteroffer and to support those numbers. And so again, sometimes, frankly, I do spend a lot of time depending on the situation. Some of these emails, can take me up to an hour to really put together, but they pay off in spades. And not only does it help my client understand, it really brings a lot of clarity to me on where we should be, how we should be responding. And when I'm out there on the next listing appointment, this adds to my knowledge and education on the market and just how strong I am in knowing that. So that's securing a price reduction is a lot of fun. And that's, again, presenting and negotiating offers. So I utilize a lot of these reports and technology for that. The piece of this too is it's really challenging, I find, for you to just sit and tell your client, this is what it should be. So I use the feedback, the data. So all you agents out there who aren't good at giving feedback on listings, I encourage you to change your ways. Feedback is data, it's important data. And now, if I am showing houses, I'm really cognizant of making sure that I give good feedback to listing agents because I understand how important it is. So I am taking that feedback, I am taking what the market says, and I'm creating a picture, and I'm letting that speak rather than me telling them. So it's like putting together a picture book for your clients. Here is a picture of what's happening. What's the best way for us to respond to this? What's the best way for us to position you? What's the best way, for us to move forward? So I use it for that. Avoiding a price discussion. This is a big one. I'm sure most of you go in on listing appointments and you can tell even from the different personalities, you're doing your thing, your dog and pony show, and then, you say all that. Do you have any questions for me? So what do you think my house is worth? And I really avoid having that conversation at all costs. And I'll tell you, it's because it's bitten me in the where very often. So when I was newer at doing this and less experienced, I would go in very, excited. I would prepare ahead of time. I'd have my comps, go through. And now people expect it even more, I think, because we're Zooming a lot initially. So you've sort of seen the house. And then I would give this, here's what I think. And either I didn't get the listing because I wasn't the highest number, which didn't mean I wasn't the right number, but I wasn't the highest number. Or I would go back when it was time to price the house because I did get the listing, and they would say, but you said blah, blah, blah. And so I learned a number of times, and it's definitely something where you have to go in and be able to give them all the reasons why pricing now doesn't make sense. And in this market, it's really easy. Everything is so fluid. The calendar is a blur. There are normal times of the year that used to have a rhythm to them, and we've lost that. So pricing close to when, if not right before you come on the market, is really important. A lot of inventory is going to go under contract. Some new inventory will certainly be coming on the market. A handful of things might close. When I'm talking about pricing now, I'm barely looking back more than houses that have gone under contract in June in this market. So you need to be able to adapt and understand what's happening in the here and now and be able to speak to it. And if necessary, what I do is I show them currently what's in the market, and I'll say, so where do you see it? And very often they'll come up with a number, and we'll come up with a range. And I'll say, you know, I agree with that. I definitely think here in the here and now, that's a possibility. Like I said, once we get closer, we're going to finalize that number. And then I speak to my list to sale price ratio. So that's very important. That's another piece of data that you should have and you should be able to use. And if you know who your competition is, you can figure out and understand their list to sale price ratio and possibly use that to your advantage. So that is also why pricing is so important, because as you build your business and become stronger and stronger and list more properties, having a great list to sales price ratio is going to be a huge benefit for you. So I'm constantly telling people I put more money in my clients' pockets, and I can show it. So when I'm up against, and look, I'm on the Sue Adler team, but I'm not Sue Adler. So I'm a great listing agent. I work hard for my clients. I do a great job, but most people don't know me. So I have that additional obstacle to overcome for my credibility. So using the data is really important. So if you're newer to doing this, if you're looking to break into a different price point, if you are just wanting to up your game, know your data, you know, work on that, figure it out, and look at who your potential competition is. And even if you don't know, you can bring in who the top agents are in that market and show them if in fact the numbers work for you. So I highly recommend that. Again, you can speak to that and tell stories. Tell stories about how you listed a home and you're expecting multiple offers and you only got one and it was low, and then someone called you the next day, but you use that to leverage and were able to get them the number. So telling stories, using the data, using your experience is going to help you with all of this. Nurturing your pipeline. So I think we're all meeting with people who would love to sell today, aren't ready, have no idea where to go. And in COVID, it's difficult for them to figure it out in some cases. And so I put them on a report that they get on a weekly basis so that they can stay on top of the market. And when I call them, I have something to speak about. So I can bring value to them and say to them, you know, I'm reaching out just to check in and to update you on what we're seeing in the market. And they're getting the data. So we end up more often than not having really good conversations because they have something to bring to that conversation. They come with a lot of questions in some cases. They'll speak to specific properties and ask, you know, how that compared to theirs. So using the data to nurture your pipeline not only educates them, but gives you some really good fodder, for lack of a better word, or conversation to have with them doing your follow versus, hi, I'm just calling to check in and see if you're ready to list yet. So to me, data just, it drives everything that I do. There's a lot of tools on the MLS. There's carts. I don't know if we can go into this in the question and answer period and get into sort of specific reports. I'm going to show you now just some of the reports that I use. And I don't know if anyone has any questions at this point. Again, I can't see them, so I apologize. I guess we'll wait till the end. So this is a good example of when I pull the history and use it to my advantage. This is a house in Livingston. As you can see, there's a lot of history on there. They've been on and off the market trying to list this property. And prior to these people buying it, and even once they purchased. So that's just one example of something that I use. This is a chart that I pulled together for a client to show them the breakout by price point, where the market was. These clients had paid a lot in 2005 for their home and got divorced and wanted to sell their house. And frankly, the market really wasn't supporting at what they were hoping to get. And the interesting piece of it is that I kept feeding them data, and having every conversation I had or every email I sent, I included some piece of data. And ultimately, when the house closed, the seller said to me, they didn't get their ideal number, but they did well. And the seller said to me, when we were looking for agents, we interviewed 6 agents. And as soon as I hung up the phone with you, I said to my ex-husband, she is the only person who came to the table with data and stats and information, and hire her. And then ultimately, she said, the process was amazing. You were amazing. The information that you brought to the table every time we communicated was above and beyond, and I couldn't be happier. So all the work that you put in pays off in spades, and that's, you know, a client who will refer me. And if they ever buy houses anywhere again, I'm sure in the area, they'll call me. But this is just, it's great information. This is 2 pages. There's some great reports that you can pull off of the MLS. I'm assuming a lot of you know this, but I guess that's why we're here, just in case you don't. So I pulled this, and I have to just move my, so the one that says Westfield, that is a 1-page document that you could basically pull out for any town within the MLS. And it will give you, right now, August is the latest month that you can pull. But it gives you a really good snapshot of last year versus this year, plus year-to-date data versus last year. And in a nutshell, this, you can be on the phone. So very often when I'm on the phone having conversations, you know, my headset is on, and even if I'm in a Zoom, I am on pulling information as I'm talking to them. So if a brand new first-time caller says, like, what's happening in the market, I can say, oh, well, in Westfield right now, inventory is up X, is down X%, but sales are up X%, blah, blah, blah. So this is a great one-page snapshot that I can use, that I can send, and it looks very professional. The other chart is part of, I think it was like 27-page report for the entire county. So this would be Union County. And it breaks it out from single-family, townhouse, adult community. If that's, you know, part of what you have in your area, that's great. And again, it speaks to this. I pulled just the single-family page because that's really what most of us, the predominant, I think, of what I sell anyway. So it's new listings, pending sales, closed sales. Again, year-to-date or for the month, and then year-to-date. And it's shiny, and it provides a ton of information, and it literally takes a minute to pull it up. So I highly encourage people to play and go on with all the tools that you have in your arsenal and see what capabilities they have, because you're probably not using them to the extent that you can.
Lori?
Yep.
We had a question. Exactly where did you get these charts from? It looks like realtor.com and the MLS. Is that correct?
This is all from the MLS.
Yeah, nice.
This is from the same search in the MLS. So I can show you guys. I have the MLS open. I'm more adept at pulling data than I am at sharing in Zoom, but I will in a minute try to unshare this and share that screen and see if I can show everyone. So I had pulled another slide, but it came out horrible. If any of you use Showing Time, which I think a lot of people use now, there are reports in Showing Time as well that you can pull that speaks to, by price point, how many showings for that entire zip code in the last 30 days they've been getting, or the last 60 days, or the last 90 days. That's another report that I like to pull when I'm speaking to my sellers if we're not getting the traffic we want, if we're getting traffic but no offers, if I'm seeing other homes go under contract, or I'm in one price point and the majority of where the business is in another price point. And I can also try to go and do that. So if you want me to, give me a second, bear with me. Like I said, I'm gonna try to, do I have to stop this share to share something else? No? Okay.
I don't believe so. So long as it's your main screen, then you
Can
should
you
be
see
okay.
that?
I
Do
can
you
see
see
the
what-
MLS.
The MLS, beautiful.
Mhm.
Okay, so if you go into analysis, NJR municipal stats, you select a year, and this goes back. So you can show if somebody says, well, you know, what was it like 3 years ago versus this year? You can do that. So for these purposes, you just go in, you pull your year, you pull your month, you select a county, and you can either do one of two things. You can, what did I do, Bert, whatever. You just click on a town, and there you go. There's your report. You can go in on the bottom here and just click all towns. And here's where you get, this is a 15-page report for Bergen County, and it gives you just a monthly snapshot right there. And then if you go, hold on, there's your single family overview, your townhouse overview, adult overview, new listings, pending sales. I mean, look at this stuff. This is what we pay for. So it's here. It's really easy. The one thing I will say to everyone is only share data if you can explain it, because you're going to send people reports and sometimes people are just going to look at them and go, oh, thank you, that's great. More often than not, they're not going to understand everything and they're going to ask you to explain it. So do not send data that you cannot explain. That's my hard and fast rule for me. And if I don't understand it, but I want to understand it, I learn it and then I send it. So very often I have called, the MLS has a helpline. I use helplines on all of my, you know, they all have it. Showing Time has one, MLS has one, whatever your CRM is has them. Use the helplines or tap into, you know, people who you think are good at this or know this, and just ask the questions. Don't not use the data because you don't understand it. Learn how to interpret it so that you can use it to grow your business. I use absorption reports. These are easily pulled as well from the MLS. So very often, not so much now, but when the high end of the market was very soft and I was dealing with homeowners who had high-end listings that weren't selling, absorption reports were my friend. So I could just say, look, there's 3 years worth of inventory. So what are we going to do? Let's talk about it. What's the strategy? I use Otto if you guys are subscribers. So I'm a subscriber. I go to Otto's workshops twice a year. I get the reports. I use the reports. I read the reports, and I'm able to speak to it when I need to. So again, these are just some of what I do. Showing list, again, list to sale price, original list to sale price. The more data in some cases that you give people, the decisions and the answers, I can tell you that I have seen a huge change in my trajectory from when I started using this data and when I started really working predominantly in listings 4 years ago, and then really started to pile on the data. the conversations have changed. My pricing conversations now, I'm going to tell you 70 to 80% of the time, my seller says, this is where I think it should be. And it's not me telling them. And very often they come up with a number lower than I have in my head, which I love. And so I always let them speak first. That also allows me to understand what their expectation is. I always, and a lot of times they're going to answer and say, well, that's what we brought you in here for. You're the expert. And I say to them, you're absolutely right. And I brought this data with me and I want to look at it together, and let's look at it and tell me your thoughts. It's not going to sway me one way or another, but it's important for me to understand where you're seeing it so that we can talk about the best strategy. And sometimes, fortunately or unfortunately, that strategy is to price it higher than I'd like to, but then we create a plan and we have an action plan if that doesn't work. So make sure that your seller is committed. I know everyone says don't take overpriced listings, and if they're highly unrealistic and you know that it's going to be a nightmare, then yes, walk away from it. But if you know that ultimately they just need it in their heart of hearts to try it, make sure they buy into a strategy. It's in writing on your contract. They sign it, and you have that in place and you react quickly to it. And again, provide the data to them in that time frame, so when the time comes, they can't look back and say, well, what if, you know, and have all these questions and reasons for why we shouldn't do it. So now let me see if I can get back to, let's see. Okay, so I think for the most part, that's what I have. And I just say, walk softly and carry a lot of data. Let it do the talking for you. Does anyone have any questions? If I stop sharing, can I see them? Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, chat, there we go. I don't know.
I have a question for you, Lori.
Yeah.
So if you were to do a ratio or a percentage of how many listings you get based on the presentation that you provide with data, would you say that they're higher percentage that you get the listing every time, or, you know, does it vary? What do you find? I know you have to diagnose or evaluate the person by their disc, but what do you find works best?
Right. So I will tell you 100% of, I believe wholeheartedly that the data and or the knowledge of the data is what helps and ensures that I'm at least at the very top of their list to get the listing. And I'm sure that's the reason that they sign with me, in addition to my wonderful personality. But what I will say is, very often you have a husband and wife. So you have husband and wife, significant other, who are different personalities. So you just need to play to both. And more times than not, at least one of them is more about the data. So I find that if you can be charming and you can educate them and bring a lot of information, then it's a win-win. So it doesn't have to be one exclusive of the other, right? You can still pet their dog and, you know, talk about their kids and their grandchildren while sneaking in, or just using it so you know, and saying it nicely, right? It's sort of how I present it. So I have a client right now who is constantly, not on the market yet, but I'm sending her the updates. So she's constantly sending me emails saying, oh, I saw this one just closed. My house is much better than that. Is my house a good comp to this? And it really isn't. Her house isn't better than that. But I I know how I need to speak to her, and I can answer her questions and to her personality, and it's still avoid, and I do it very adeptly with her, speaking to her price. And so I think it's huge for me, no question.
Thank you. I do have another question here from Karen Gill. She says, what do you send as your weekly report to nurture those prospective buyers and sellers?
So I send actives, under contracts, and closed properties. And I send it generally I'll do it within a price range within the town. I rarely will get very specific in terms of streets. I just want them to see the big picture.
Lucy asks, how exactly would you respond to that seller who constantly tells you that their house is better when it isn't, especially over email?
Yes, so email's really easy. So I didn't even have to respond to that. My response was that, and I have to think back for a second. The way I responded to her was basically that, yes, that is one of the comps that we will review when we price your house. And I'm excited to get going. That was that.
That's perfect, right?
Yeah. So.
Ooh, Mohammed says, what's the best way to secure a 5% listing?
Ask for 6.
That's perfect. Anyone else have any questions that they'd like to discuss with Laurie?
Yes.
Hi,
Hi, Laurie.
Hi.
Thank you so
How are
much.
you?
My apologies for not a polished office look.
Oh, please. I'm like in a cave here. I feel like it's.
Oh, you look fantastic.
Uh-huh.
Really, I joined later. Thank you for the reminder. Really loved the way how you describe the approach, being very pleasant and delivering a lot of data. You probably gave us all the recipe, like for the wonderful, powerful cocktail that not all of them have the ability. Like I know that I can use data, I just don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah.
However, you are confirming once again that being pleasant or having soft skills doesn't bring you to the top of the game. So learning from the best is wonderful.
So I want to just cut you off there for a second, because I'm going to tell you that I was a literature major in college. My brain is not math. It is not. I was a business major for a semester. I failed accounting. Economics put me to sleep. So when you look at this, and it's interesting, when I went into retail and I learned how adept I could be, I never had that that faith in myself that I had a business head and that I could look at reports and understand them. I think you're selling yourself short, because you are looking at this information every day and you are using it. You're just not thinking about it, and you're not consciously applying it to get the desired results that you want. So I encourage you to sort of take that voice out of your head, because I think anyone here in this room who does what we do and can speak to their market can do this. It's really about taking information, and if there is a specific, look, there are a couple of reports that I don't use because there are pieces of them that I'm just not fully comfortable. It's sort of, to me, like, when you first started in real estate and you had to explain the consumer information statement and it got to dual agency. And I feel like that's the one that trips everyone up on how to really explain that the right way. I equate it with this. The more you do it, the better you're going to get and the more comfortable you're going to be. and you'll see. So sorry to interrupt you, but I think you're better at it than you think.
Thank you so much, Lori, for inspiration. So step by step, when you know that you have somebody who's ready to sell in, let's say, 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
what system do you set up, and what reports, how do you choose which reports to send to that specific person, in addition to your, maybe general monthly newsletter?
Yes.
Do
So
you do it
I
specific?
I'll tell you, there are certain things that are on autopilot, and then there are certain things, and I believe that this is important. So I have a whiteboard, and my whiteboard is my sort of Bible and to-do list. So on my whiteboard, I have all of my actives, my pendings, my closed, but also either things that I've signed or that are coming on later, or my coach has me using the pipeline tracker that is part of KW. And so as part of my follow-up, as I'm looking and I'm seeing things happen, so if I know I have a client, for example, in Summit, whose house might be coming on, or they're not ready to sign in 6 weeks, I will, in addition to just the email they get from me once a week with what's going on in the market, I will pull together something and send them a separate email, or pick up the phone and just have a conversation, because I do spend time almost every day looking at the data when I have the time. And so if I feel like there's something interesting and relevant to somebody specific, and the only way that triggers for me, and that's me personally, everybody's different, is if their name, address, whatever it is in front of me. And so, it's just like working with buyers. You have a list of buyers. So when you look at your hot sheets, you're like, oh, that house fits that person. So if I'm, looking at information or just updating some things or having, frankly, conversations, that was another thing that I didn't really talk about. And I appreciate all of you who take my phone calls and talk to me about your listings when I call and ask. And I'm happy to do the same. I think it's really important for us to share with each other when we can, when it's not going to, impact our fiduciary responsibility to our clients. But I gather a lot of information by networking and talking with my peers. And so very often I'll find something out and I'll pick up the phone and call somebody and say, hey, I know this house is coming on in your neighborhood and blah, 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 or I know this house went under contract and here's what I know about it. And so I utilize that a lot. So I did leave that out, but that's a big piece too, is networking and sharing and garnering information.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Lori,
Yes.
I know you said there's a pipeline in the pipeline tracker in KW. Now that's not opportunities, is it? Like where do you get that?
Jackie, do you know the report what I'm talking about? It's kind of like a pipeline tracker where you put, I'm sorry, I use it, I'm not. So you put your clients, and you can set up an Excel spreadsheet if you want, but you put your client, and that's, I think, in essence what it is, but you put your clients' information in there, and then you rate them on a scale of 1 to 10, how far they are out, and that determines what your rate of communication should be with them, right? So if they're a year out, am I calling them quarterly? So, and then you look at your tracker every day so that you can see who you're supposed to be reaching out to. So it's just, for me, it's one tool I use to make sure that I'm not letting people fall through the cracks. But I'll go back and I'll find it and where it's accessible. But I know it's definitely through KW because I have a MAPS coach and he shared it with me.
Okay, thank you.
I know there is a section in Command that you can do this with opportunities, like you were saying, Maureen, where you can put, time frame, budget, and then like in Ron's classes, you can set up tasks and smart plans for yourself to remind yourself, hey, I want to make sure I send out an email, or I want to make sure I give them a call or a text or whatever. Those are some of the ways that you can use it in command for sure.
I'm really big just on, I'll put it into my calendar to remind me, because I don't know about everyone else there, but when your CRM gets to a certain point, which is a blessing and it's a wonderful thing, but when you have a lot of people in there and it flags you and you get busy and then you miss a flag, it doesn't come back to nudge me again. So very often I just make it an event in my calendar, a reminder in my calendar, 3 months out, call so-and-so. So it pops up on my phone.
Thank you.
We have a couple minutes left. Lori, there were a couple questions in the chat in regards to the 5% showing time. And
Okay.
I'm not sure what the last one says. Is overcoming a situation with a seller that keeps blowing you off. That one seems a little more difficult.
So listen, people blow me off all the time. You're not alone. I think that happens to all of us. So I chase them down for as much, as I can. I keep reaching out. I send them information, but I don't waste my energy a lot on people who aren't interested in talking to me, because I want to produce. And so they are on my radar. Again, I reach out, I'll send them information, but if I have to really, really chase someone, then I'd rather find the person who's willing and who's motivated and who wants to talk to me. So I don't know if that helps, but.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
There's any more questions for Lori? We have like one more.
Laura, I have a
available.
question for you.
Thank you.
So I'm curious, I'm always struggling with the commission, right? So I often walk in and I tell people, standard commission is 6%. And sometimes I catch myself before I say, like, that's the rack rate on the back of the hotel door. And I just put the paper in front of them and that works. I wonder if you've ever felt like charging 6%, or maybe they signed 6 and you knew you only needed to pay out 2.5 because you were taking a big reload hit. If you ever feel like it's cost you a referral, like, is it always a good idea to go for that? Or sometimes you think, well.
I'll tell you why not. Because if I net my clients more money than someone who's discounting, then it ultimately doesn't matter and they'll refer me.
Yeah.
And I generally can say that I do that. And that's what, and that's because I bring the information to the table for them and the service, frankly. And so I don't think that's cost me any referrals.
Yeah. So the whole 5% conversation should be on this chat room, should be a 6% conversation for all of you.
Well, if you want to know the easiest way, because then if your ultimate goal is to secure 5%, then they feel like they've negotiated it. And show them what agents are offering out, right? So use the data. Say,
yeah, no,
look,
I agree. I just again, I'm really concerned about the long term rather than the, I mean, recently someone asked me to negotiate and I was like, yes, we can do 5.5. And, there we are. I still have 3.
Yeah, exactly. So look, it used to be easy. Things change, but I believe that when you bring, you bring the value. So if you're netting your clients the money and giving them the service, because we all know, and I think the referral comes from, most of these transactions don't just happen easily. There's a lot of work to get from contract to close and to keep it together and to get to the finish line. And I think once a seller experiences that, their view is a lot different than when they came in. So on the back end, when they're referring, they communicate that experience to their clients. And I've met with people who have said, oh, my friend sold their house and you know, they got over asking, and then the buyer just came back and like beat them up, and they had to give back like tens of thousands of dollars in inspection or whatever. So I think most sellers recognize that it's a tough world out there when you're selling your house. And if they don't, you got to tell them.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lori, for presenting today. It was
Well,
a
thank you.
wealth of knowledge. We really loved having you here.
I
Thank you for everybody that participated and was watching. We always appreciate that. Lori, is there anything you want to say to sign off?
Just, if anyone has questions, I'm certainly happy to answer, and, you know, go in and let data do the talking. That's what I say.
Thank you. Have a great day,
Thanks.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.